Have you ever thought to yourself, hmm, why do I do this? Why do I react like this? Why am I like this? Why do I think like this? Well, today we're going to talk about generational suffering. Over the next few weeks, as I said for the past couple of weeks, we are going to dig into long suffering, afflictions, persecutions, different things like that. And remember that I said there are three types of suffering: one for Christ, the enemy, and yourself. And yourself is divvied up between you and generational sufferings. And before you can really understand you need to understand what generational sufferings you're dealing with, which means a thought process, a pattern, a cycle, sin. What is it that you do as far as your way of life versus what you think, how you move, how you execute, um, where you fail, and where you rise. It's all going to point back to generational suffering. And some things that you do that you don't understand that you do, but it's because it is something that has been passed down to you, whether it was taught, whether you saw it, because whether you hear it or see it or somebody is intentionally teaching you how to do something, it's still taught. So what did you see? What did you hear? What was spoken to you? What disciplines did you learn? So before we can get into that part where it's you, let's find out where you came from. All right, so if you see me looking to the side, you already know I got my handy dandy notebook. All right, so we're going to talk about um, some different people from the Bible, and we're going to lay the foundation. We're going to lay the groundwork, so it's going to make sense when I start giving you directives and different things that you can do to help you, through this process, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about King David. We're also going to talk about King Saul. Now, David, he sinned. We got David, sin, repentance, and consequences. So there was two times, particularly in the Bible, where one David chose his consequence, and the other one was when the prophet Nathan came to him to give him directives on what the Lord had told him. So those consequences was already set in place. Now, when we start looking at the first one where he chose the consequence, that was when the prophet Gad came to him on behalf of the Lord. And that's because he had numbered Israel and he wasn't supposed to do that. So he had three different choices, right? And you can find these in 2 Samuel 24, verses 11 through 13, First Chronicles chapter 21, and it was verses 11 through 12, but I really wanted you to go all the way down and read 230. Okay. Reason being is because we need to understand the seriousness of our decisions, because it's choices. Our choices and decisions can affect a whole generation for generations to come. We're not just talking about one generation, because if nobody corrects it, it can go to the next generation, the second generation, the third generation, the fourth, on and on until somebody says, this is going to stop with me. This is going to stop. This is going to stop with me. So when the prophet Gad came to him about numbering Israel, David, one was he could either flee for 3 months from his enemies, or 7 years of famine, or um, 3 days of pestilence, right? And so David chose the 3 days of pestilence. And when he When he did that, 70,000 people died. 70,000 within 3 days. That is unheard of. Even with all of the pestilence that we experience here in the earth, 70,000 people in 3 days is we haven't heard of it like that ever. Like in 3 days, it takes just that long just for it to pass. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that was a serious thing. Well, like, part in that story, David saw the angel, and he had a sword, and he was just swinging his sword back and forth, back and forth. He was standing between heaven and earth. Can you imagine what David saw? And I mean, people dying left and right based on the sin of something that they didn't even do. They didn't even commit the sin, but David repented, and the Lord even repented because he saw the devastation. And so the Lord, after David made a sacrifice and a burnt offering, the Lord stopped it. He ended it. So, one, just look at that. When you are sinning, that doesn't just affect you. When you make a bad decision, it doesn't just affect you. When you make a bad choice, it doesn't just affect you. We have to stop thinking that, oh, well, this is me. This is my choice. This is what I do. It ain't got nothing to do with nobody else. Yes, it does. Because whoever you are attached to, they gonna hit the blunt of it too. They gonna have it too. It may not be at the same level of you, but look at what happened with David. David committed the sin. David lived. We don't know who was attached to him that died because the Bible doesn't specify that. But it was the people in his kingdom that died. And so, like, they didn't have anything to do with it. They didn't know what David did. It wasn't, they probably didn't even know that it was a sin for what David did and what the Lord had told David not to do. But yet they died. Their family suffered. Their loved ones suffered on the behest of somebody else's choice and decision and sin. Let that sink in. Generations were cut off. Generations were affected because of another man's sin that they were in connection with. Hear me. They were in connection with David because they were living within his kingdom. So if we're living within your kingdom, think of this with husbands, with homes, right? You have husbands, you have fathers who have homes. They are the head of their homes. Uh-huh. And so when they make a choice, when they make a decision, when they sin, it doesn't just affect them, it affects the kingdom of their household. hmm Oh, but don't stop there. Please don't stop there because the wife can do the same thing. She can cause the same thing. Like that saying, a happy wife is means a happy home. No, everybody needs to be happy up in that house. It's not just one person that needs to be happy. Everybody needs to be happy in that house. Not just the wife, but the husband, the wife, the children, the dogs, the cats. Everybody need to be happy. Everybody needs to be in peace because that everybody needs to experience that joy. Not just one person for a whole atmosphere of people to be happy. It depends. It's on the behest of one person. No. So even children, when you make a bad decision, it don't just affect you, it affects the whole family dynamic. Just like when the parents make a mistake, it affects the whole family dynamic. Nobody is above anybody when it comes to bad decisions, bad choices, and sin. Nobody is above anybody, because you can point the finger at somebody else, and there will be that person that you pointing the finger at can have three pointed back at you. That other person you pointing the finger at can have two pointed back at you. So nobody is exempt. Nobody is above anybody when it comes to bad decisions and who it affects. Because King David is proof of that right here, right? So let's go on to the second time where the Lord gave the consequence. And that was when it wasn't even that, it wasn't even when he committed adultery with Bathsheba. No, 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 no. It wasn't even when he conspired to bring Uriah home, Bathsheba's husband, you know, to leave the war to come home. So the baby that she was pregnant with could be passed off as Uriah's. So the adultery wouldn't have been exposed. No, the consequence didn't even come after that. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. The consequence came is when he conspired, set up, murder for hire, all of that. Bathsheba's husband, Uriah, put him on the front line and to leave him there. So when the baby comes, he can be in right standing, and it won't be as if they committed adultery, that the king was in sin. That's when the consequence came. Not saying that the consequence wouldn't have came, but that's when God said, okay, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Go on out there to David, because I got something for him. And that let me make sure. Let's see. Because I want to make sure I have the scriptures for that. 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 7 through 12. So you all have, the main scriptures that we'll be talking about and coming from. So of course I'm not going to read all of that. I'm just surmising it in this lesson, and you go back and you go over these scriptures, because you study to show yourself approved. Don't just take what I say for face value. Go and do some studying yourself. Okay? Take the lessons here and go study. Because when you study, the Lord starts to reveal things to you as well that he has not revealed to me, or that he wants to reveal to you. And so go study. That's what you do. Go study, right? All right. So now, when we start looking at the sin that David had did, he affected a family. So what was the Lord's consequence for him? He affected his family. Yeah, the baby didn't live, died, gone. Then also, the Lord said trouble will never leave your house, your family. So he caused a problem and with somebody else's family. So God caused a problem in his. What happened? His David's daughter got raped. Um, then you had Absalom, who, uh, started. He was doing all kind of stuff to his daddy. He was starting all kind of mess, doing all kinds of things, right? Doing all kinds of things, trying to taking over his spot in the kingdom, getting people to turn against, getting the citizens to turn against David, to get some of his military to turn against him. Absalom chased his father, chased him out of the kingdom, took over the kingdom, and then was killed by his King David's loyal servants, loyal soldiers, right? That's just a little bit of what that's just a little bit of what's going on, right? So understand that this is something that's generational, because when you start looking back throughout the family of King David, like you the sword will never leave your home, leave your household. That's what the Lord said. That's what he said. So here's the thing. Here's the thing with that. Um, do we suffer because of somebody else's sin? Yes, we do. We do. We do. Um, we suffer. So at the um, at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Like, you have to understand your that your choices and your decisions does not only affect you, it affects your household for generations to come. And if you start looking back, you can start seeing some things within your own family. But we're going to get to that. All right. So I looked up affliction, right? I did look up affliction in the Bible, getting the original meaning, the original words. And on, Oni, Hebrews 60:40, means trouble, depression, misery, and poverty, right? Now, the word depression itself is not in the Bible, okay? Um, but that's something for another day. And, I really wanted to look up poverty, because what I've learned is that poverty has many different meanings, and not all of what only our infinite minds have been told, okay? So, poverty is the result of actions and inactions depending on the context. So you can have poverty is not a way of life. It's the results of the way of the life that you live. That was so good. That was good. I'm going to say that again, right? It's not a way of life, okay? It is a result of the life that you live. That's what poverty is. Because when you look up poverty, especially in the book of Proverbs, how many times it's listed and in the context that it's used, it is used for a lack of discipline, lack of wisdom, a destitute relationship with God, laziness, pride, deception, manipulation, rebellion, sloth, um, characteristics, refuse to be corrected, and lack of understanding. Now, when we start looking at what that means, okay, where do you find yourself in this handy dandy notebook? I'm just throwing that out there, right? All right, so trouble. I was looking up trouble as well. Now, there are different Hebrewic numbers, strong numbers to for these words, but I'm just going to um, sum this up, because I don't, I just want to go over this, right? But you can find all of this in the Strong's Concordance. So, trouble means to stir up, disturb, taboo, disturbance, calamity, anguish, adversary, adversity, distress, affliction, tribulation, trouble, tightness, vexer, a female rival. Um, and tightness means a person feeling restricted, compressed, squeezed, i.e., kind of like somebody who is claustrophobic, right? They're in a tight space, they can't breathe. That's the kind of tightness it's talking about. Then another word talks about iniquity, vanity, or wickedness, which is more of a spiritual or more morally form of trouble. So even though depression, the word itself is not in the Bible typically talks about like anxiety, sorrow, things of that nature, right? Despair. So, like for example, one of those is Psalms 42 and 5. You can go look that up. Psalms 42 and 5. So, misery, I looked that up as well. That is toil, trouble, labor, wearying effort, perverseness, grievance, iniquity, sufferer, laborer, wretched one, a workman, sorrowful that labors, that is misery, weariness with exhaustion, evil, calamity, brought on by bad circumstances. Um, and you can find that like in Job 11:16 and Proverbs 31 and 7. Okay. Now, with all of these different meanings coming from the word affliction, when we're talking about suffering, we're talking about one of the words that we'll be discussing is like affliction, persecution, different things like that, right? So when we start talking about generational consequence, you have one act equals a consequence, which equals multiple affected generations. If someone doesn't step up and say this ends with me, okay? So there are three things here: how to recognize generational suffering, learn to see how it has carried on and affected the generations in your family, and learn how to end it and its effects. So we're talking about choices and decisions, right? So I'm not going to repeat that because I already said it. It doesn't just affect you; it affects generations because it affects your children. If you have children, it affects your children. If even if you don't have children, whoever you're connected to, it affects them. Whoever you're teaching, whatever it is that you're teaching, whether they're seeing it by example. Um, let's just talk about abuse for a minute, right? You Nobody teaches you to be abused. Nobody teaches you to be in domestic violence. Nobody physically teaches you and say, "Hey, this is what you do." Blah, scoop, scoop, honey, and it. That's not what happens here. Typically, domestic violence. What happens here is it is taught because of what a child sees, because of what a person sees, whether it's your child, whether it's your siblings' children, whether it's your cousins or your aunts, your uncles. Everybody see what's going on, right? So don't think that it won't, just because you don't have children, that it don't hit you. It hits you. However, somebody is physically seeing it, right? However, they see it in the home. They see what happens to their parents, or they see what happens to their aunts and their uncles, or you know what I'm saying? What have you? So whoever is watching you, whether you are physically telling them or not, they are watching how you live. They are watching what you do. And when they watch you, you are teaching them. You may not be physically doing it, but trust me, they're learning. They're learning something. So what are they learning from you? So we're going to talk about King Saul, because King Saul, now check this. King Saul, running the kingdom, he disobeyed God's instructions. The prophet came to him and said, "Hey, this day the Lord has ripped the kingdom from out of your hands." Okay, because he didn't do what was done. So in his disobedience, it bred fear, it bred jealousy, it bred insecurity, and it bred division and contempt, right? Because all of David experienced all of this. So King Saul, he had war within himself, he had war in his kingdom, he had war in his family, and it affected his servants, his grandson, his economy, his estate, and his family, even after he was dead and gone. Jonathan's son, his grandson, Mephibosheth, was in Lodabar, barely making it, barely making it. The servants barely making it. Okay. Um, Proof. You can read 1 Samuel 18:6 through 9. You can read chapter 16, verses 14 through 23. chapters 24, 25, 26, and 27, and 2 Samuel 21, verses 1 through 9, 1 Chronicles 10 and 6. Okay, so what we're going to start off with, because we're going to be talking about suffering for some weeks, okay? And so we're going to do the first part of what I was talking about in generational, with generational suffering. So first thing you got to do, how to recognize generational suffering. One, go get you a pen, pencil, journal, notebook, whatever you need. And the reason why I'm not saying laptop or your phone, because no, you need to be able to write this down, keep this personal, okay? Keep this personal and private, and in something that you can always go back to. All right? Because here's the thing, when you learn something about something that's going on within your family that's generational, not only do you find it out for yourself, but you find it out, you learn from it, you grow from it, and you leave it behind you, but you still have to equip the next generation so that they don't fall back into it, because it can be picked up again. Because you have stopped it doesn't mean it didn't stop from the sibling or the extended family or what have you. So we got to get people to, it's like how the Lord said earlier in like the Old Testament, where he was talking about Joshua and teaching teaching the generations, teaching the families, having the families teach their children about the word, about the Bible, with the scrolls, teaching them the 10 Commandments and keeping it, keeping that the laws and different things of that nature within the mindset of the people, so that it doesn't lose power, it doesn't lose effectiveness, it doesn't lose knowledge. Okay, knowledge, that's key right there. It has to be, knowledge passed on, because when somebody is equipped, when they have knowledge and they're equipped, then they know how to move, they know what's right and what's wrong, they know that this is not what God is about, and they say this is who God is. They are aware of what is going on, so when they make a choice, they are aware of the choice that they're making, of a decision that they're making. And you will have to be able to equip those who are coming after you, those who are there with you now, and those who are coming after you. So even the ones that haven't changed, once you come into the knowledge of it, you got to change it this way, and then you got to change it that way. You got to go from side to side, and then you got to go forward. You can't do nothing about what's back there, but it can stop with you. It can stop with you. Them spirits don't have the power to keep moving beyond what you have learned, know, and grown from. They don't have that kind of power. So therefore, that's why I say get a notebook, because you may have to create a binder that says, okay, even when you're dead and gone, that lesson can keep on. And it's something that you pass down from generation to generation to generation. Come on. All right. So that's why I say get a journal. Not a tablet, not an app on your phone. Get a journal, because the Lord is also going to give you what you need to come out of it. You're going to need to have a tracking paper trail. You know what I'm saying? He may have you do some hypothesis, some tests. You can tell them, hey, this is the test that God gave me, and this is what I did to pass. They need to know how to pass the test. The generations that's coming after you need to know how to pass the test. The ones who are still here with you need to know how to pass the test, because they're struggling. They don't know why they do what they do. All they know is that they're doing it. All right. So what you're gonna do next after you get that journal, pen, paper, whatever, think about the suffering you see in your family members, to include extended family. So think about the suffering you see in your family. We're not talking about sin, we're talking about suffering. What is your family suffering from? What are the things that you see? Disease, sickness, health, wealth, relationships, marriages. Like, what do you see? What do you see? What are they suffering from? You have to be able to identify that, because it's we're gonna get to that. So after that, think and look for the sin or way of living that's attached to that suffering. Because if whatever suffering is going on, there is a way of living, a thought process, and or a sin that is attached to that suffering. That that is going to be key. How far back does it go? Don't matter. We see it, and we see it in siblings, we see it in children, we see it in parents, we see it in um um what they aunts, uncles, cousins, all of that. Like, you see it, right? So what is it? What kind of way of life, thought process, or sin that they live that's attached to the suffering that's going on? And that's what I'm saying. This is why you need that journal, because God's going to start revealing some things. You want to come out of it? You want to come out of this long suffering? You better start journaling, start doing some stuff. All right? Now, journal all of this over time. And that's why once I do this here, talk about this, we'll talk about the second part next week, because you need 7 days to go over this, to actually watch and see and take notes, right? Because it's not as just as simple as, oh, just thinking about it. No, you need to take this time and journal and be like, okay, you know what? Yeah, all right, that makes sense. That makes sense. Mm. Because it's funny how somebody who, let's say 2 generations later, is behaving like somebody else from 2 generations ago. The one that's in their generation now, don't know what happened, why they lived that life, or why this is what it was, but they end up living a life that somebody else lived within the family 2 generations back. How is that? Okay. So then you see how it has affected you. All right. What do you do, or patterns you follow, that can be associated with your suffering? What was passed down? Because that's another one. That's the last one. What type of thinking or living or sin that was passed down to you that can be associated with your suffering? That you think is, and even a thought process that you may think is right and normal despite what the Bible teaches. For instance, okay, you know how the Bible says, not to be unequally yoked, right? That the children of God has no fellowship with the children of darkness. But we will say that's what scripture says, right? But then we'll go around and say, well, should people in the world treated me better than people in the church? And however, it may be true. It may be true. But then we have to start thinking about, are we rightly dividing unequally yoked? That's one. Two, still, the word is the word. Fellowship, the children of the light has no business, has no fellowship with the children of darkness. It's the word. So what's going on? But because we think that way, it was taught to us that way, and we experienced it that way. What's going on? What patterns that have we followed that allows that? What kind of way of thinking do we have that allows that? All right. So it can be a thought process that you think is right, that goes against the word, but you can never know it until you know what the Bible says about that thing. Once you understand what the Bible says about it, then you can say, okay, well, God, but this is what I'm experiencing. Help me to understand this. What's going on? All right. So think about it. What type of thinking was passed down to you that can be associated with your suffering? So I want you guys to work on that this week. That is your homework, because I'm going to do the same. Trust me, this just didn't come to me. No, I'm going to do the same. There's certain things that he's already revealed to me years ago that I have changed, um, that I have gotten rid of, like the spirit of anger. The spirit of anger just it just passed down. It just passed down, okay? And it wasn't until my spiritual dad, we was all in, I think we was in marriage maintenance, and I was expressing something, and he said, "You got the spirit of anger." He said, "I need you to go get that lesson." Apostle Harold K. Brown wasn't playing. He was serious about that thing. He said, "No, you need to go handle that." Basically, he was like, "You need to go handle that. You got that spirit of anger." Uh, and then he told somebody, I don't remember who it was. He's like, "Hey, make sure she get that tape." So I had to go get it. I didn't even have to pay for it. Like, he was like, "No, you need to go handle that." So, but I thank God for that. May he rest in peace. So, but once he did that, and I understood where all of that was coming from, then so I said, okay, it makes sense, because now I'm starting to look back. I'm starting to look back and starting to go over some things. Okay, well, this is a pattern. This is why maybe I do this. This is why maybe I do that. Um, but I have overcome that, because I was very angry, but I had to learn how to get rid of anger. I had to learn how to be angry, but not sin in my anger, because yeah, I'd sin in my anger. So um, I could be angry, but I couldn't do what I was doing. I couldn't do what I was doing because I was angry. That wasn't cool, right? So these are different things that we're talking about. So there's some more digging that I'm gonna do in my background, and like the Lord has already started revealing some things. So I was like, okay, well, let me get this journal. Let me go do this, because I'm gonna need to handle this, right? Go handle it, y'all. Do this homework. And next week, we're going to get into some more. We're not going to address it right away, but I need you to start the process, because we're going somewhere with this. I have testimonies for myself that I've experienced of what God has brought me from, and what He's shown me throughout the generations of my family. And things start. I mean, and then He started revealing stuff. And I said, "Oh, that's why. Oh, that's why." Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. Bam. So we gon' if we're gonna suffer, it ain't gonna be because of us. All right. So go over those scriptures that I gave you, do the homework, and come back next week, so we can continue to move forward in getting rid of this prone to suffering.